It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, it's Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I want to introduce Amy Powers to you today. She has a passion for PR, crisis management for nearly 3 decades. Amy remains steadfast in her belief that every challenge brings a unique opportunity. And I happen to love that because I truly lean into the challenges that are opportunities. Her ability to see the positives and provide strategic counsel are 2 of her amazing superpowers. Amy, thank you for joining us today. And let's lean into some opportunity together.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
How did PR become your destiny in life?
Well, I want to say, my first exposure to it really was as a college senior. I'm a graduate of a women's college in Virginia, which is now a university called Mary Baldwin College back then, now a university. And I had the luxury, and I call it a luxury, of having a professor come in for 1 year. He had worked in the PR field, and I just was fortunate enough to be in his class and wrote my first press release. And also at the time, I was editor of my college newspaper. And so I loved this idea of blending my passion for writing and my passion for journalism and uncovering the truth and telling the truth with business. And I didn't want to be a journalist, but when I wrote my first press release, honestly, that's really what set this whole thing in motion.
Where did the idea of and starting in PR turn into opening a business and scaling a company?
Growing up in Atlanta, my parents had traditional roles, right? My mom was an RN, my dad worked for, a corporation. And so I saw this 9 to 5 machinery at work, and never once in my house was the word entrepreneur mentioned. I just didn't know that even existed. No fault of theirs. But if I go further back a generation, I would always go home to Jackson, Tennessee to visit my grandmother. And she raised 5 girls on her own. And she also had a seamstress shop called the Nifty Shop in Jackson, Tennessee. And to this day, I carry her business card in my wallet.
I love that.
Thank you. But, I would sit in the back of her shop and sometimes I would, play around with the sewing machines and make my dog's clothing or just watch her interact with customers. Sometimes, one time I got into her, if you remember the old zipped bank bags that had cash in them and you would put them to the bank to make your deposits. One day I opened it up and it was just full of just money and it was all crumbled up. And I thought, oh, I'll just get out her ironing board and iron her dollars. And so anyway, I just did things when I was bored. But what I was learning was entrepreneurship. I was watching her engage with customers and keep people happy and watch the dynamics of the relationship. And so, I think that all played a role in me becoming an entrepreneur. I just didn't know it at the time. So fast forward, I moved to Dallas in 1990 and I had a couple of false starts where I was trying to get it off the ground. I just couldn't. And so in the point when I was working for other people and I was engaged and getting ready to be married. I found myself without a job for the first time in my life since the age of 15. And that was when the wheels started turning. And I thought, well, maybe I can start freelancing and do this on my own. And so that freelance work turned into, me finding my first opportunity for employment as an entrepreneur.
And so from that first freelance project to scaling a company, a team, office space in Dallas, et cetera, that's quite the transformation. It starts from that little bud, right?
Mm-hmm.
Into a full bouquet very quickly.
Yeah.
What has surprised you in this journey as a leader?
Well, I did leave out one funny aspect to my story, which I know I had told you previously, but my son and my company celebrate their birthdays on the same day. And that's because my company is now 25 years old, soon to be 26 this fall. And that's because when I married, do what most couples do, you have your first baby. I went into labor. I'm at the hospital and my husband at the time called home to check messages and picked up a message from a gentleman that was my client years ago when I worked for other people. And he was starting his own dealership group and his own entrepreneurial journey. And so I just said, I'm going to have a baby today. And if you'll wait 6 weeks, I'll meet with you. And so that's really what happened. So that's what put the whole company in motion. But
And I assume your maternity policy has improved from 6 weeks to
oh,
longer.
yes. Yes, I was very naive that I feel that great after 6 weeks to go have a business meeting. But yes, we have a very generous maternity policy. When I
No, I mean, I remember myself in delivering my first child and being, I was not yet a partner in the printing company I worked for, but I remember like my clients were like, you have to let us know. And I remember like we had phones, hard phones, and I would remember like calling them and saying, I delivered, I'm in the hospital. And they're like, oh my God. And then like, the baby was 2 weeks. I'm like, how you doing? I stayed in touch. I mean,
yeah.
owning a business.
Yeah, and, with my I had a daughter, my second child, and, that same client had no hesitation calling me again in the labor and delivery or after the labor and delivery to have a conversation about something he needed. So you just do what you gotta do, right?
Yeah.
When you're creating something like this. Going back to your question about, things that I've learned and maybe things that have surprised me, around this time, this is 1998, 99, in that window. And I thought to myself, I'm going to have a completely virtual agency. That's my dream. And I don't care where they do their work as long as I have the freedom and flexibility. And so about 5 years in,
Very cutting edge at that time.
it was cutting edge. And,
Huge.
people looked at you like you were crazy to think that that would even be a possibility. I polled my employees at the time and said, "Hey, would you like to have office space or do you like how we're doing it?" And they all came back unequivocally and said, "We want office space." And so I thought,
Wow.
man, I wish I had not asked that question. But I'm so glad I did because what it did was put things in motion. And so we started subleasing, and we actually had a client at the time who made a very generous offer. And he said, "We've got extra space. Come work with us." And I thought, what a great person you are to not only be my client and pay me, but to allow me to office from your space for no charge. So when you fast forward years later, decades later, actually, we still stay in touch. And I said, "Why did you do that for me?" And he said, "Amy, because somebody did it for me." And so it's just such a beautiful story. Anyway, so it put all that in motion. And today we now own our own building, which we bought in 2021. And it's the headquarters for the Power Group. And it's in the design district of Dallas, Texas.
I so admire and respect so many parts of this of you obviously, but so many pieces of the story to leaning into your team and asking. And then even though you didn't want to do it, you followed what was important to your people.
Yes.
And then you continued to scale and you invested in your own real estate in not just leasing, but you bought a building and you have really stepped in and you have so much to show women leaders
Yeah.
what's possible and what we can do.
I love that.
Let's raise our kids.
Yeah, I love that expression of what's possible, and that's the way I like to approach life. I mean, just because something didn't work, in the past a certain way, that doesn't mean it can't work again. And maybe you do it differently. So I try to get my team to have that mindset and to always be thinking like, what's possible here? What could I do? Okay, so it didn't work this way. Let's just try. I have an expression at the office, just something I say a lot, but I'd rather see you try and fail than not try. Right?
100%.
Yeah. And that's just a great way to go through life. And
Well,
so,
because but it's truly our failures, our mistakes that
yes.
teach us more than
Yeah,
any playbook can teach us. Following a playbook, you go step by step by step, but what do you actually learn in the big picture the next time you apply it? Do you have to go back to the playbook, right? But you make a mistake. Oh, that learning lesson is hard and fast, and you know how you course correct it, and you bring that forward as we strategize forward.
exactly. And even when I reflect upon the creation of this building, purchasing it back in 2021, I'd never done this before, right? I just knew that, just like when I said yes to the phone call in the labor and delivery room, I knew that was my moment
Yeah.
to start the business. And then when this building presented itself, I thought, what a great space for my team. What a great investment for the company. What a great way to build value. And I just knew that that was my moment. And if I didn't seize it, I would regret it. I knew it was going to be hard, and it was. It was hard on me, it was hard on the team because we had to go completely virtual for a while, and it took longer than expected, post-COVID.
Shocking.
Yes, I know, shocking. Commercial, building takes and anything construction takes longer than expected, but everybody hung in there, and I really, am very appreciative of my team for just hanging in there with me and believing that, yes, this will happen, we'll get there. It was hard, but we did it. When I reflect back on growing up, nobody ever said, "Oh yeah, you can buy a building, you can own real estate, you can do
Right.
this." It wasn't on the radar, right? It was just you go to college and you get a degree and you get married, and that's it. And you get a job.
And you get a job, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to you create a company, you build real estate, you build value, you build a team. What has helped you grow and what have you seen shift in PR?
What has helped me grow personally and professionally? There's been a lot of things, but just to give you kind of a laundry list of, I think it's always having this curiosity and lifelong learning passion, this passion to always know and ask for more. I think it's, engaging a business coach off and on throughout my career. And that's something that I encourage my employees to seek out. And sometimes I've actually, I hate to say it, but sometimes I've forced it on them because I know it's going to benefit them. People in sports have coaches. And so if you think of yourself as a business athlete, why would you not want to also have a coach to improve your skills?
Right, and people in sports have multiple. They're
Yeah.
working with a weight training and strengthening and endurance, right? And then there's your strategy and on your field or your whatever that field looks like. Sometimes ice, sometimes whatever it is, tennis courts, whatever. Right? In sports you have multiple. Yet as business, and when we strive to do our best, it's just becoming now part of the norm to say,
Yes.
hey, I want somebody, working with me to help me reach my best of the best.
Yes. Just like, clients engage us because they can't do what we do for them, right? Themselves. As I like to say, you can't read the label from inside the jar. And
Website, I like that expression.
I and it's true. And so if I'm going to be better as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and move into, phase two, phase three of my journey, I need somebody to help me get there. Anyway, that's one observation.
Let me ask you this, Amy. Having worked with numerous organizations and companies, having worked with numerous people on your team, what is one tip or piece of advice for our listeners on entrepreneurship and leading forward that you can share today?
Something I personally experienced was just losing this whole idea of I've got to command and control everything. The faster you bring in your people to be solely responsible for things and get out of their way as much as you can, the faster your organization will grow. And that's something that I regret not doing that sooner, but I didn't have the knowledge and the skills and the capacity to and understanding to do it. But there's so much education out there right now for entrepreneurs, and I think if you go find and look for that type of knowledge, you'll find it. It's so hard to do, but it's so true, and I'm experiencing it in real time. Like I have a leadership team, and I find that when they might do it a little differently, but
Yeah.
I find if I just let them do it, we still get there. We might get there differently, but we get there.
So many people and so many of our team members, when you let them lead from their unique strengths and
Yes.
understand the values of ourselves, our companies, our clients, and you let them lead from their strengths, we all learn.
Yes. And they learn. And that's the whole purpose behind my business. Yes, I have an amazing PR firm. We do a lot of great work, but there's also this bigger purpose behind it, which is creating business women, right? I'm the first businesswoman that I created, but I
Yeah.
have 9 other colleagues that are all in different stages of development and growth. And it's so exciting. I have one young lady that's celebrating her 4th anniversary with us today. And it's just so exciting to see and to reflect on the maturation of her journey, right? How I reflect on how she was day one to where she is today, right? And that's true for all of them. I have another young lady that's our vice president, getting ready to mark 9 years, and
Wow.
started with me as an intern. And she's
So
watched the.
you really bring people up and give them a chance to grow and develop.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I'm hearing, and I adore this about you, Amy, is really help them truly be their best,
Yes.
contribute, and that's staying power in an organization.
It is. That's the legacy of this company, really, because some will go the journey with me, some will not. I'm watching some women that were part of the power group, let's just say roughly a decade ago, and they've gone on to work for major CPG brands. And it's exciting to watch them. And a couple have gone on to start their own companies too. And that's exciting. I think as leaders, the more we can feel less threatened about other people's successes and growth and to invite them to the table to learn with us, the better off we're going to be as entrepreneurs and the better off our companies are going to be. And that is a real shift in how you lead. And it's something that I had to learn and constantly working on, but again, I think just bringing them to the table is the smartest thing you can do as a leader.
Amy Powers, thank you so much for joining me here today on Her Success Story. You're brilliant. What you have built is truly inspiring in
Thank
so many levels. And I love the way you lead. Listeners, this is what I'm going to say at this point of the show and what I say every time at this point of the show. Take a deep breath in. Think about that one thing. That's that one aha, that one takeaway from the conversation Amy and I just had. Jot it down somewhere and then make a decision in what's the one action you're going to take. Be consistent in your actions. Be consistent. It's a gift to yourself. I love that you guys lean in to listen. I love that we have such great followers. But always, in every show, find that one thing that you can take action on. Please share this show forward to others who would enjoy listening and hit subscribe. We come into your inbox with fresh new content and great interviews like today with Amy every Monday morning. Amy, thank you again for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ivy.